Alright, welcome to another video, and before we get started, I'd like to take a quick minute to thank all the Patreon supporters and YouTube channel members whose names you see scrolling across the screen right now. They make this financially possible, and without you, I probably wouldn't be here making videos, so thank you. Alright, so we're off for yet another walk-snail flight with a swordfish. In my last video, I kind of alluded to the fact that I was going to be trying out some test firmware, that we should see some of these changes making it into another public release, which is slated to be out pretty soon from what I'm aware. But one of the biggest changes that is something I've complained about from the very beginning, and I know a lot of other people have as well, and we've kind of all been waiting for it to be fixed, waiting to see an update, and to be honest with you, I personally had kind of given up on ever seeing it. I kind of doubted that it was ever going to happen. I had maybe assumed that it was like a hardware limitation. It just wasn't going to be possible for them to fix it on the current hardware. And thankfully, they've proved me wrong, and they fixed it. And so if you're wondering, if you haven't noticed already, the issue that I've often complained about and that is fixed that I'm testing in this particular flight right here in this video is the flickering OSD when onboard recording is enabled. So if you notice in the top right corner of my video here, you see the recording icons for both the ground is the top one showing 116 gigabytes left. It's a 128 gig card in my video receiver VRX module, as well as recording on board the bottom one there with a little arrow icon, which is kind of denotes it's the sky. It's the 32 gig receiver on that one. You see I'm showing like 27.7 gigs free, but they're both recording. And you'll notice that there's no flicker on the OSD, which has always been a problem up to this point. Anytime you were recording on the video transmitter, your OSD would flicker. And I mean, I've shown that in earlier videos. We see regular questions about it in the Facebook groups and walk-snail Discord and things like that. I've had people ask in comments on my own videos, how do I get the good stable OSD that doesn't flicker? I just always disabled the onboard recording up to this point. And it was because I didn't really need the onboard recording. I was personally happy with the quality of recording I was getting on the ground. And when the V2 transmitters came out with the Pro cameras, the V2 transmitter introduced the 32 gigabytes of storage, as well as the V2 camera introduced the gyro in the camera itself for gyro flow, which are both features that I really wanted to make use of, and they kind of bring a lot of value to the system for a lot of people. But to enable that onboard recording and make use of all that nice stuff that they added, you had to deal with the flickering OSD. So that's why I've always been, if you look back in my other videos, I've always just been recording to the video receiver and not the transmitter. You'll see the little recording icon usually shows up just on the top one there for the video receiver. And that's why. But like I said, right now what you're looking at is the actual HDMI output from the video receiver module that I record on a PC using a USB capture device. It's how most of my videos have always been done. It's much easier as far as my workload and everything. I don't have to go back and render the OSD onto the recorded video files, and you don't have to deal with the sync issues, because there are still sync issues that I believe they're trying to correct. But I know, especially in earlier firmwares, the recorded OSD, even, it records a video file, then an OSD file, and you use a third-party tool to render the OSD on top of the video to have your OSD on the video that you can use in an editor or something like that later. But there was always been sync issues, and they did improve on it. They worked on that a bit, and I think that's still something they're trying to correct. But I know usually after the first file split, you would have your second part of your video there from the first split on anyway. You'd have sync issues with the OSD and the video not matching up in time just right. But recording the HDMI output like this allowed me to kind of work past that, because the OSD is always in sync when you're flying around. Everything's perfectly normal. So I just record the output from the HDMI, and besides, I like that it gives a better, more honest representation of what actual flying with the walk-snail system looks like. Like, you can see all my goggle icons along the bottom, just like what they look like if you're flying either with the monitor like I do or in the goggles. That's what they're going to look like. And you can see the little warning, little red border that pops up for the warnings and things like that that won't show in the recorded files. So all of that is reasons why I've always preferred to just record the HDMI output. But I'm going to go ahead and skip a little bit because you can kind of see that fire out there is what I was kind of flying out to. So I'm going to go ahead and skip ahead to that part so that we can talk about some of the onboard video a bit more. Alright, so like I said, I was flying out toward the river to check out that fire. It's actually a sugarcane field that's been recently harvested, and the farmers were burning that off. It's kind of a routine thing, happens every year around here. But I thought it was neat being able to see it like this late in the evening on a nice wintry overcast day. It kind of looks pretty neat from the air. But yeah, I'm going to go ahead and switch over to the onboard footage now that was recorded in the video transmitter. And this is actually recorded, like I said, it's recorded onboard on the transmitter and then ran through GyroFlow. But you'll notice that my stabilized video isn't terribly stable. It's somewhat stabilized, but it's not perfectly flat horizon, or not flat horizon, or don't have the horizon lock enabled or anything like that in GyroFlow. But the horizon is still kind of bumping around a little bit, kind of like the airplane does. And I do want to point out that the reasoning for that is probably twofold, and they're both my fault. Number one, I don't use GyroFlow very much, and while it's a very powerful program, if things are not perfect as far as like gyro data and sync and everything, what you present to it is not good, then you kind of have to know what you're doing to work around that to get the best results. And the other issue that I believe is my fault, well, I know it's my fault, but I believe it's the other issue contributing to this, is the fact that my airplane is not very smooth as far as vibrations and things. As you might have noticed in the last video and in this one, I've been playing around with different propellers on the Swordfish, and I'm running some of the clear Gemfan Flash. I think these are 6042s that I have on it for this flight. But I've been playing around with a handful of different props in that last handful of flights. And the props are not balanced. I haven't taken the time to balance them as well as I normally would to work out all the little minor vibrations. They're good enough, obviously, but you see we're flying in a pretty low light, overcast day. It's actually quite a bit darker than it looks in the video, but this is the Pro Camera in night mode, so it's going to look a lot brighter, and everything doesn't really show how dark it actually was. But the point being, when I fly on a more brightly lit day with these props that are not balanced, you'll notice I'll get jello in the video. There's actually a fair bit of vibration, but the lower light and longer shutter times and everything tends to mask that jello quite a bit. And you can kind of see that in the prop blur and everything, how smooth the propellers look and all. That's because of the low light. And that's also what hides the gyro, because there definitely, the jello in the video, because there definitely is vibration present. And I can actually show you that two ways. I can show you, this is a kind of the little timeline thing that shows the gyro data in GyroFlow. And you can see that there's actually a lot of noise. There's just as much noise as there is actually motion data recorded by the gyro. And if we skip ahead once again here to this point in the flight, you'll notice my throttle percentage down just over the right motor, the kind of lower right hand side of the OSD. We're cruising at about 40% throttle here in fly-by-wire mode. Now you'll notice I lowered the throttle to start descending. So if we switch back to the stabilized video at this point, while the throttle is running at a lower percentage, thus lower RPMs on the motor, the vibrations are probably still there, but the resonance changes the frequency of those vibrations. And you'll notice how nice and smooth the video is here, the stabilized video. Other than that one little bit in the pan right there, and again, that is probably my lack of experience with GyroFlow, something I did wrong there. But you'll notice how much locked in and smooth and pretty much perfect I would call this, just by reducing the throttle. So I'm contributing most of that, the lack of nice, solid, locked in video, to my poorly set up motors and props right now, which I will try to remedy later. But I just wanted to clear that up. And another thing I wanted to point out that I noticed. So if we skip ahead into another point here in the video, while I'm making an approach for a landing, I actually decided not to land as we had a tailwind coming this way. But you can see I'm back on the throttle here because I know I'm going to go around. I'm just going to make a low pass down the runway. But even while I'm on the throttle, now that we're actually down low and there's some visual flow in the video, I guess would be the right way to say it while we're talking about gyro flow. But there's actual things are visually flowing through the camera frame. I guess that gives GyroFlow some more to work with as far as doing its optical stabilization that it does on top of the gyro data. You can see how much better that looked. And then once we kind of get back on the throttle a little more and climb and the ground motion kind of slows down and things, you can see it kind of gets a little bit shaky again. And then once again, we can go ahead and skip ahead to the landing approach right here. And even during the turn and the descent and everything, while we're kind of backing off the throttle and we have that visual flow within the video frame again, you can see everything kind of smooths right out and everything works really well here. Looks perfectly fine. Now it did get a little shaky through the landing, but I think that's to be expected once you kind of get a wheel on the ground and start bouncing along. It's kind of a lot of motion and movement there for GyroFlow to kind of deal with, and kind of a noisy gyro data anyway. But that's what I have to show you right now. And we're going to switch over obviously back to the OSD screen here, because when we disarm, it does stop recording in the transmitter and receiver, because I have that enabled in the options, the auto record stuff. So anyway, I just wanted to show that it is working and remind you all that Walksnail is listening to us and is working on the issues that we complain about. So a big thank you to Walksnail, and of course to all of you for watching the video. And hopefully it's enjoyable, and keep an eye out for what's to come. Weather's kind of bad right now, but we will fly as soon as we're able to again. So I guess I'll see you all then, and thank you for watching this one.